From WBBZ-TV Sports, it's time to Beat the Champ. Now, here are your hosts, Paul Peck and Sue Novoitsky.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new month of Beat the Champ. We're here in Niagara Falls at Rapids Bowling Center, and Paul is out on assignment again, so I'm joined by my teammate, my friend, and fellow Hall of Famer, Sue Jeziorski, and by another Hall of Famer, a lot of insight into bowling, Fran Bax. So, Sue, new week, difficult shot, a little tougher for these guys. What do you see out there?
Oh, I'm gonna see some interesting play. We've got a very diversified field. We've got two high rev rate, high speed players. We've got a slow straight player, and we've got a two-hander. So how they break them down is going to be kind of interesting.
Right. So Shawn Mosier's coming back from Bradford, Pennsylvania. Hasn't seen this shot yet. New condition for him. High qualifier was Josh Large. That will be our first match, and we also have Gary Kinyon and the two-hander Chris Labiak. What do you see out there?
Well, you got four guys with totally different styles, hand positions, rev rates. This ought to be very interesting, Sue, especially for this difficult condition.
Without further ado, let's get started. It's Josh Large on our left and Shawn Mosier on our right. Shawn Mosier being our returning champion. And he has opted to let Josh start. As the returning champion, he would have the choice of whether he wanted to start, and he left that up to Josh. And I'm guessing that's because lane 29 might be a little bit tighter. What did you see?
Lane 29 is definitely tighter. Josh struggled on it during practice. Really needs to move a little bit right and square up on it.
So it's really part of the strategy, I think, is watching not only where you have the best ball reaction, but also seeing that your opponent kind of struggled on that lane and kind of wanted to put him on it.
Always watch your opponent. Make the smarter choice.
A little tough start for Josh, but you know, we kind of watched that in practice. This lane played tighter for him, and he opens it up just a little bit. He opens up his swing a little bit, and I think that direction, your body direction, is very important today. What do you think?
It is. Your shoulders are going to be a little bit square. His hand at the bottom wants to definitely bump a little bit to the right from what he's used to bowling on house shots.
Exactly. His feet got a little faster now, didn't he?
Feet got a little fast. Very outside is super tight down the lane. So unless you have slower ball speed, coming off the outside of 5 is not going to make it up.
Right now, because in bowling the obstacles cannot be seen, this just looks typical to everyone, but it's not. This is a little tougher scoring pattern than a house shot, which is what we typically see here. Back to the action here. Nice cover on that spare. So again, now he's going up to the tighter lane. His shoulders are very, very square.
They're very square. His feet are a little bit further right on this lane too, as well. So he figured that out during practice.
What's amazing is that he didn't bowl on this. He didn't have to qualify on this because he was the returning champion from Bradford, Pennsylvania. So that's the kind of challenge when the champion has to come into a new center and really not have bowled on the shot, where the people who you're bowling against have already proven that they have bowled well on this condition.
They've seen it. You know, he just put his work in on his practice time. He watched what his ball reaction did, and that's probably one of the smartest things as a competitor that you can do. You know, watch how your ball rolls and make your adjustments off of that.
Okay, well, they're getting their sea legs here, but you know, I don't anticipate that we're going to, and I hate to predict it, but that we're necessarily going to see the high scores that we typically see, even in qualifying.
Right.
Scores are pretty low. 564 was the last bowler to make the cut, and you know
wow.
that is a kind of a lower score, but it's all relative to what you're bowling on.
Definitely tighter on that one. He squared up a lot. Got a nice break.
So we'll take a look at Josh here and see if he's made an adjustment off the last shot there on lane 29.
Great adjustment. Oh. He did square up, he moved a little bit right, looked like it was a little slower. And the other thing when you get on these patterns, because they're bowling on oil that's a little bit fresher, down the lane where the pins are is pretty dry. So when the ball is going to come off where the oil is, sometimes if you square up too much, it goes high and you leave a lot of splits, and that's what we saw during qualifying. It wasn't very easy if you tried to go too straight. So
Well, you know, in these one-game matches, you don't have a whole lot of time to figure it out.
No.
And going light, making adjustment, and going high could be a bigger nightmare. So right now, filling frames and staying clean looks like puts you in a good position.
yeah, if you're a better spare shooter and you can at least get the ball around the pocket, you should be the one who can prevail over this. So. And I can say another thing that I think that happens when these lanes are really oily, like what people can't see. When they're really oily, the thing that most people are going to want to do is go harder at the pocket. So a lot of times you are going to pull it because you feel like if you throw it straight up the boards, it's not going to hook.
Right. So you're trying to help it out a little bit.
Yep. Try to help the ball make it, and it doesn't look good when it gets down at the end of the lane.
And I'll tell you one thing that I noticed, because I did qualify on this, you also did, and you made the cut and I did not, was spare shooting, honestly. And I find that from bowling on a house shot all the time, this is more challenging because you second guess your equipment. It's get a little frustrated out there, which is what I kind of anticipated. But you second guess your equipment. You're not as used to, watching your ball do those things. So I'm missing an abnormal amount of spares, and that's going to be to his benefit that he's making those spares.
Right.
This feels like a good time to take a short break. We'll be right back with more action on Beat the Champ.
Instant replay on Beat the Champ is brought to you by Transit Lanes and Keglers. Join us for bowling, food, and drinks.
Welcome back to Beat the Champ. Let's get back to the action here on WBBZ-TV.
Helping the bowling ball doesn't always work out in your favor. In this case, it did. Push.
When I was watching these guys warm up on the practice pair, they were doing a whole lot of striking, and in a house it'll be different from pair to pair, but we kind of anticipated that this TV pair would be tighter because it's got to hold up for 3 weeks, and it's also got to in this part of the house I think plays a little bit tighter. I know this is where we did our qualifying.
Oh. See, here comes another spare shot into play too. This is a tough part. If you make your spares, you probably spend more time working on your spares than your strike game at some point in your career. Who's ever bowling out there? Spares are a big, big, big part of the game.
I'll tell you, after 4 years of doing this show, it couldn't be true. Because even though people strike a lot more,
It's going high.
it ends up being the spares that win the match.
Yes. Yeah, I think I bowled a game last week where I had 8 strikes, and I only shot like 190 because I didn't make spares in between, and the strikes weren't in the right spot. So strikes aren't always it, right?
So right there, that spare puts him up in the match.
Exactly.
He doesn't make that spare, and we're dead even. And there's our smiling face of Fran Bax on the Castellone Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram scoreboard. A little different than our normal smiling face.
That was a nice shot. You got a little bit more loft on that.
Big place to have it too. We're getting towards the end of the match, and building a lead right now would be much to his advantage. And he'd hate to make that 2-hour drive from Bradford to just wrap it up in one match.
Either that or venture out to the casino. Which I'm sure he'd rather be here bowling. Wow.
This was a little forgiveness on the right lane.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, on lane 29, that definitely would not have made it back.
No, they would never have come back in lane 29. So the interesting thing is the next one match coming up, whoever wins this match has to face Chris Labiak, who's a two-hander, and another yet dimension. That was the thing with today's field, and these three guys finished 1, 2, 3 in qualifying. Big strike right there.
Huge double.
And so even though they're 1, 2, 3 as far as scores go, they're very different in their games. So that just goes to show you that this was a shot-making condition that didn't just favor one type of bowler.
And that's actually what I like about this stuff, because anybody can play on it. That's going to be a rough spare, too.
Well, this is going to go right down to the 10th frame
It
here.
is. Yeah. And Shawn's going to have a hard time getting that 9-pin out on the back. So this is one of those spares that we don't ever like to see, because you're going to get the 3-9
Right.
or the 3-6-10 and leave the 9. This is not, and especially on this pattern, too. Let's see how he fares on that. Great spare.
Great spare.
Yeah.
But you're right, with that ball speed,
Yeah.
the ball doesn't really have time to work.
Yeah.
You don't want to chop that. You don't want to, chop that back pin off.
Nope. Those are the spares you never want to see. All right.
So the best Shawn can
Let's see
do
what
here
Shawn-
is post up a 201 to try to force Josh to have to strike.
Yeah. Let's see what happens.
Wow, at least it's
All right.
not a bunch of pins he has to knock down, right? So.
Yeah, this one is just move a little bit right. Throw up your strike shot. And he's using the same ball to shoot this spare, which is wise on a 2-pin on this. All right. And the spare strike
All right,
for
so
one.
that's a big spare because he's really forcing Josh to have to throw the first strike.
Correct.
So he really does need count here.
Yes.
If he gets,
Yeah.
I mean, this does play a factor too, because Josh could get 9 spare and go out for 186. So that means he really does need to get at least 7 pins here to force him to have to
Yeah.
throw that first strike in the
We don't
count.
want to see another 3-6-9 time on this. Great shot.
Great count.
To end the match, yep. All right. Let's see what Josh can muster up here.
It's kind of surprising because he's letting him finish on his good lane.
Yeah, I don't know if he had counted. Like sometimes when they say if you want to start, and you got to realize what the other person's
Right,
going to do. So
where
I
they're
would have
gonna
forced
finish.
him to finish on 29.
Absolutely.
Wow, there you go.
And
His first win.
Josh he's gotten his first win out here, right? 2 shows and 1 win. That's not too bad.
No, that's excellent.
Yeah. So we're going to make sure he gets the count he needs on this one and keeps this one on the lane, and we're good.
And hopefully he can figure out 29 for the next match. What a great shot that was. Pretty confident on that one. It's kind of funny when the lane starts to move a little bit, how you get that confidence and just throwing the ball better.
Right? Absolutely. Well, Josh did a great job, won his first match, and we will be back to talk to Shawn right after this. Shawn, always one of the challenges from changing bowling centers is the shot also changing. What did you face today out there?
It was a little bit longer pattern, a little bit more challenging, but I had a good look on the practice pair, but the pair over here was a little bit tighter, and I was all over the place anyways. I really wasn't that consistent, but hats off to Josh. He bowled a good game. Even though he had some opens, he held it together and he pulled through.
Well, it's always a pleasure to see you, and I know that we won't see you again to the Southtowns, but thank you for coming out, and you did a great job out there, and good luck going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll be back right after this for our next match. So that's our champ, Josh Large, on our right. He's electing to let our contender, Chris Labiak, start this match. So a little weird decision, I thought, there, since he seemed to favor lane 30. But, you know, maybe he figured something out that we don't know.
I think during practice he may have got a little more comfortable on lane 29.
So Chris is a two-hander, and you know, we're talking about you know, going straight up the lane, which obviously I think he got that ball going actually a little bit left.
It was left off his hand.
Talk a little bit about the challenge with a two-hander playing up the boards.
A lot of that with a two-hander is their rev rate is pretty high, which means the ball is just going to be hooking as soon as it gets off their hand. So generally, they're going to be a little bit more comfortable going left and trying to open it up. But when you get on this much oil, they really have to play around with surface changes on their balls, more than you would think. So talking to Chris during practice, he had chose to put more surface on a lot of his equipment, so it stays a lot smoother, so the ball doesn't hook as much, so he can go straighter up.
Right, and they have to get their hips out of the way when they...
Two-handers do,
right,
to keep their arm swing really clean through and tight to their body.
Because you are pulling your left arm across your body, so that stands to reason. Oh, tough break there. You can just tell he's very loose on lane 30.
He got really comfortable at the end of the last match, and when you get comfortable, your speed might go up a little bit because you get a little more aggressive, which may have happened here. I'm sure he'll settle down a little bit, but that was still a great shot, and as the lanes start to dry up a little bit as the match goes on, he should be fine.
Right, and I just think that, you know, he's comfortable knowing that that ball is going to come back on lane 30, because so far, you know, when he's gotten to the right, it's come back every single time, where 29, a little tired down the lane.
During practice, I did see him move a little bit right on 29, so he may have figured that out. Really like that he uses his urethane on his spare shot, too. So goes a little bit straighter at it, which makes it a little bit easier. So
we have seen so much more urethane.
Oh yes, completely. The last couple months too, a couple of the new balls coming out, Purple Hammer, that's been just a crazy seller. And a lot of these different patterns that are coming out, I coach at college, and the teams we play against, last week a whole team came out and all they threw was purple urethane, and really changed the pattern a lot.
And that's what we alluded to last month. Urethane does break the pattern down different.
Very much so, and that's kind of where you get trapped if you don't pay attention to what they're using, because the urethane is going to push oil down in the back end very differently, sideways differently. Your back ends will tend to get a little bit tighter. So the back part of the lane where the pins is, your ball, if you're throwing another ball, may not move through the back really well, so you'll leave a lot of 10 pins and swishing sevens. Right, very common.
Great shot there by Chris. Yep.
So this is nice. And Chris also, he's using equipment that's a little bit older, so that in itself is going to make the ball a little bit smoother.
So how important is it when you say a little bit older? Because we're talking about, it's kind of old technology when you talk about urethane balls, yet you talk about someone having old equipment and that sort of,
Well, a bunch of differences here. Like his cover stock won't be as fresh. There may be a little bit more oil buildup in there. The surface of the actual ball doesn't want to grip the lane as much, which is actually really great for two-handers that have that high rev rate when they bowl on this. You don't want stuff to move that much. They can move the ball on their own. They don't need the extra help. So I think that was his choice on having equipment like this. And he's been learning a lot about ball motion with BowU, which is really, made him a little bit smarter. And I think that's why he did so well during qualifying.
Well, I can't argue with that. And that knowledge is not something that was necessarily part of, the early game. It's sort of been part of the evolution of the game with the evolution of two-handers, and then now even the traditional throwing, guys that throw traditionally have a higher rev rate than they used to. If you watch the PBA Tour, these guys have, even without two hands, have high rev rates, and that seems to be where the success is right now.
In back in the days when we were bowling, when we were younger, you didn't have equipment that moved the way this stuff does, so we became actually better, and I don't mean it in a bad way, we became better shot makers.
Right.
You know, we were used to moving on the approaches. Now it's all about what ball do you have in your hand and which one do I change to, which on the pattern that they bowled on this week didn't come into a factor as much, which was kind of nice. It's kind of old school in a way.
Right. It's good for the pro shop people like yourself that this has become a very a lot about technology, but you still have to pick the right ball. I mean, you still it actually makes it more complicated because you have to go into like 6-9 bowling balls and you have to pick the right ball out.
You know, I try to get my girls and guys at Lockport too to kind of label a ball, like, is this your most hooking ball? So you can have balls 1 through 10. This is my most hooking ball. This is this ball. So you kind of have an idea on where that ball motion is going to play as you start bowling on different patterns. You know you're going to go to, you know, ball number 4. Do I want to go up or down? It's kind of a nice way to do it, especially for people out there with their young kids that want to have the 8,000 bowling balls. You know,
you want them to do different things, right?
Yep.
Oh, tough break right there. And he finds himself down 12 pins. Really based on, you know, the unfortunate split. As you said, the opens are costly.
So we'll see how he shoots the spare. And he looked like he got lined up, so. Hang on.
This looks like a good time to take a break. We'll be back with more Beat the Champ right after this. Welcome back to Beat the Champ.
Beautiful shot.
Great shot. And again, he's a little deeper on the lane than I would have anticipated. I would have thought that they'd be a little bit further to the right looking for the friction, but it seems a little bit more consistent playing the track, inside the track a little bit.
Well, and I think these guys too, with the higher rev rates, are used to playing in a little bit more. So even though it might not be exactly forgiving, that's where they're comfortable. So for them to be a little bit further right, their swing is going to get a little tighter. Kind of what we saw in the first match. The swing gets a little tight and you pull the ball a little bit more. And that was not a bad pitch.
No, but he finds himself down 34 pins halfway through this match. Ooh, a little bit more than that. I think doubly difficult here is the difference in the two lanes. On top of this being a little bit difficult scoring pattern, these two lanes are playing just a little bit different.
There, and it's, you know, it's we've got Josh that had a little bit more experience because he bowled the first match out on here. He's a little bit more comfortable, and Chris, I think, is just having a hard time with figuring out the judgment on his spares. Like, where do I want to stand to throw this? And both times that he missed that spare, he missed left. The ball just went by the spare. That's where I think, you know, for Chris, even though he's two-handed, I think a urethane ball might not have been a bad choice on this pattern. Happy with that one.
So with Josh being inside, playing a little bit deeper than Chris is. Well, seems to be a little bit right of Josh.
He is.
That actually affects Chris's hook point, like where he can find his hold, because actually with Josh using the lane inside of that, it's kind of pointing out that if there's someone playing inside of you, where your normal moves would be bigger than they would be if you were all in the same area.
Yeah, there's a couple things going on. When you have somebody that's inside of you, they're pushing oil your way. So right now they're both right-handers. Josh is putting a little bit more oil to the right, so Chris's ball won't come up as much as he would have thought. It won't make the move because he's shoving oil that way. And then if Chris tried to move right, generally what's going to happen is the ball will pick up a little bit earlier, so he'll go high. So it makes it a difficult decision on
right. So
which
you're
way
taking a tough shot, and now as these guys play on it, they're making it harder because they are so different.
Yep.
If the players were very similar, they would be all in the same spot, and they'd be breaking it down the same way. Yep. But when you're talking about, and we even see this on house shots, where if the players are very different, you can break that house shot down to be not as
First game will be nice and high, and the second game's going to drop.
Right.
Third game might get real ugly.
Hey, he's staying
Definitely
clean.
lined up on 29.
Yep.
So
you're right.
Made the right choice.
Right.
That's what I saw. Yeah, I think he just figured that out.
Yep. We thought for watching the first match that 30 was the good lane for him, but lucky for him, he knew better.
Let's see if Chris can finish up strong and figure it out a little bit. I really think that he could have played in a little bit. It's just potentially a bad spot right there.
Well, that's going to be it for him. I don't think he can't really rebound to. The best he could have done was.
Nice spare there.
Oh, great spare.
So right now he's looking at 170 if he strikes out. And
yeah, Josh has got one
locked on 29.
Yeah,
So I'd like to see Chris, figure it out on 30 for his last shot, just to make himself feel a little bit better. See, now that shot right there was way inside of where he was playing on 30.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
That jump was very nice. So I'd like to see him throw that one on 30. Right around 10, 12.
The spare strike here by Josh, though, is gonna cement this match.
Lock it up.
Wow.
He wasn't liking that lane much now.
He's gonna make us watch another frame.
Sweat it out one more time.
That's right.
He's gonna end up on his good lane, so we'll see what happens.
All right, 2 pins. Can he do it? 3 pins.
3 for the win. I'm gonna go with he's a lock.
3 pins on his good lane. I like his chances. Well, it's been work out there today for these guys. It's not, you can't just go out there and freewheel it. I mean, you really have to think about your shot, make good decisions, and hit your target.
Very nice.
Great shot.
Very nice.
That's going to do it for Josh Large. That's going to be 2 wins today. And we'll be back to talk to Chris Labiak and find out what happened to him right after this. Tough day on the lanes today for you, Chris. How much did the difference in the lanes in the pattern affect you?
The pattern seemed like it played kind of similar to what qualifying was like. The main issues, obviously, it's been a day of red circles for me, a lot of splits out there. But the big thing was execution on my part. I was kind of fighting. The big thing was I was pulling a lot of shots left to target. Even on the spare shoot on the left side, I normally don't miss them that bad. But sometimes that's how you go. Like every day, it's a different night of bowling. And today, I just couldn't find what you wanted to do and then execute what you wanted to do. So you just tried the best that you could, given what was out there.
Right, and the pattern kind of gives you a little less forgiveness than we kind of sort of see in league, don't we?
Definitely. When I first started, I was bouncing between 2 different bowling balls. But the interesting thing, when you're statistically out of a game, what I realize is, rather than dwell on the lose, is you can actually use that small opportunity, whether it's a few frames, just to try some things that you normally would, because that's where you learn, is actually from failing. So, you know. I
totally agree with you, and it's the same thing that I felt in this shot, is that we don't see it enough, and I wish we saw it a little bit more, and it was nice to get a little practice on it.
Definitely. Nice to be here.
All right, well, we'll see you again soon, and we'll be back for our next match with Gary Kinyon. Gary Kinyon on your left. He will start this match versus our champ, Josh Large. Experience versus youth here, Sue. I think we're falling into that experience category ourselves.
I'm going to go with experience. I think Gary's going to have actually a pretty good shot. He's lined up very well, and the way that Josh is playing him, he's just pushing oil Gary's way. So Gary's shot won't change too much during this match. But
yeah, I don't think he meant to get it in that much. No. Obviously, his direction is going to be from right to left, but that was, I think he tried to help that one a little bit more.
He tried to, yeah. And, you know, during practice, he was going up 4-5, and that was definitely close to second arrow, so.
While we have this opportunity, I would just like to, especially on one of these sport shots where we see that the score is a little bit lower, have to commend Chris on his grace in bowling and how, as bowlers, not every day is going to be our day, right?
Correct. And really impressive that a lot of times when things don't go your way, like Chris shot 138, he's not used to shooting 138, but very composed. And the good thing about him was he was trying to learn for his next experience. If he runs into that same kind of pattern, what do I do? And unfortunately, you see people when they bowl on something that's more difficult kind of almost give up, like just kind of throw the ball instead of trying to learn from what they've seen, you know, out there. And that's a big factor on teaching people.
Exactly. You know, in this show, we're talking constantly about execution and making moves on the lane and how to score better. But it's also a good lesson in what to do when it isn't your day and you didn't score well, and how to handle that. And I have a lot of respect for someone that goes out there, and great double right there for him. That uses this as a learning experience and doesn't quit, and actually puts a smile on his face and says, you know what, I don't see this that often. I'm going to try to make something out of it and learn something. So
that 10th frame, he was still trying to get lined up, which is a fabulous way to look at something different.
Absolutely. So I think there was a lesson to be learned there too. I think with 138, he was one of our best lessons of the day in how to handle yourself when things aren't going your way. And now we take a look at Gary here on lane 30.
And that's where he was lined up during practice. So right around 4-5, right around that first arrow. It's going to play very well for Gary. Gary's used to that. He's a straighter player. Generally, straighter players, myself included, we don't get inside often. So we're comfortable playing right of 10.
Again, today's show, we had just got to have an opportunity to look at different ways you can play the lane, and that you can line up and strike no matter how you play the game. You use your equipment, you use your talents to your advantage, and you make it work.
You can see here too, Gary's ball is a little bit shinier than the equipment that the other guys have been using, and a lot of that is due to ball speed. The really nice thing that's going to do for Gary, that one was a little bit inside, it's going to give him a little bit of hold, because the ball is going to go a little bit longer.
So So when someone comes into the pro shop and wants to get a ball drilled, and you haven't seen this person bowl before, I mean, obviously, you know, some of these players you've seen and have an idea of, but what if you haven't seen them before? Do you watch them throw a ball first so you get an idea, or can you tell off the track of their bowling ball?
You can tell a little bit off the track of their bowling ball, but if the ball isn't real fresh, doesn't have oil on it, it's a little bit harder. I like to watch them if we have enough time. We're not super busy. I do like to watch them throw the ball. My partner Ken and I really do put a lot of time in, ask them a lot of questions, see what kind of equipment they have currently. If it's a brand new bowler, somebody coming in for a new ball, generally we try to get them into not a plastic ball, something where the ball might hook a little bit, and we give them like a little mini lesson on how to get the ball off their hand.
Ooh, that was deep.
It was very deep.
Wow.
Okay.
And I think you'd be happy to find out that it held up like that, right?
That's where you're licking your chops saying, oh, I have hold. Hold is a favorite thing that a bowler can
Wait a minute,
find.
I might have found a little room here today.
And you know, because we're saying that, so that ball held up really well and he got it in a little bit. When you're bowling, as a player out there, you're going to look for a spot where you can actually get the ball in a little bit inside of your target and have it get up to the pocket, which is really nice and not go high. So you're always looking for that little extra,
Absolutely.
which they don't have much on this.
All right, good spare there, and I think this is the first match where Josh is really getting challenged and can see that his opponent also has good ball reaction. It's a different mindset when you see your opponent not hitting the pocket for 5 or 6 frames. I mean, you can afford to fish around a little bit, but not so much with Gary. He's lined up.
He's a tough competitor.
He is.
Gary's been a tough competitor for a long time. Very smart, very knowledgeable, makes great shots. This is going to be a great match.
Yeah. So right now we're pretty much tied in score. Strike here will put him up 10. So again, he's put a little pressure on Josh. Josh hasn't seen yet.
But we'll just see how Josh keeps handling lane 30, because that was the one that did give him problems on the last match.
One other thing I can say for Gary, and I think it's going to show here already in the first 4 frames, is how much time that Gary spends practicing. You know, it's just one of those things where spares, when you practice a lot, you're not intimidated by your spares. You're used to what your bowling balls do. You're used to how you attack the lane and how you attack your spares.
And your physically, your repetition is just, that was a great shot too. Your repetition just gets better and better, and you know, that's where, if you ask people to put in a little bit of time, you don't have to bowl 1,000 games a day. You come out and you bowl three structured games, 3 games.
Well, you worry about this when you see a shot like this, it's a little tougher for you and you're not 100% confident. I think the first thing you do is your feet get fast, and as soon as your feet get fast, your timing gets thrown off, the ball goes all over the place. So, wow, both these guys right now they're in their sweet spot in transition.
The action will continue on Beat the Champ in just a minute.
Instant replay on Beat the Champ is brought to you by Transit Lanes and Keglers. Join us for bowling, food, and drinks.
Welcome back to Beat the Champ.
If you're trying to throw a plastic ball at your left-hand side, how long do you think it would take someone to figure out to get used to that?
I don't think it takes long, as long as you have someone teaching you your target and where you're going to line up, because it is different because you're actually going across your body a little bit more. You know, I've seen, people that I give lessons to learn it pretty quickly. I would say a couple games of just shooting that a couple times and just getting comfortable with the feel of it. Because they're generally waiting for the ball to hook across, and you're just taking all that hook out of play.
So you think it's worth the time investment of a couple of games to make more spares?
I think an $80 plastic ball could be one of the best investments you can make. It'll bring your average up. You can make a couple more pins. Your 4-pin, your 7-pin. I use it at a 2-4-5 because a 2-4-5 is an easy spare to chop. So if you're going straight at it, and you have a pretty good margin for error. You see Gary missed a little bit there, but he was going so straight at it, he still was going to get the spare.
All right, 9th frame, big 9th frame here. He's going to have to strike here to, that double's got to come for Josh.
Yeah.
Now.
Yep.
if he's going to win
Put
this
the pressure on Gary for the 10th frame.
Right.
That was a fantastic shot. All right, so 29 was his good lane originally in the match before. Had a couple strikes on it this match, so let's see if he can get back because he had just made the move left.
Right.
So.
Right, and came up just
yeah.
a little bit light.
Yeah, so he can soften it up a hair and just move back one right. Change his target down lane a little bit. There's a couple different things.
Right.
So we'll see what he does, and then maybe we'll be able to ask him how it worked out.
Well, he absolutely needs this one.
That's it inside again.
What a shot.
Beautiful shot. Wow. All right, this is where if we were having fun, we'd just turn around and say game on, but. One more.
Okay, so what we have here, right? Strike will shut Gary out. And as great as Gary bowled, and he really did bowl a great game.
A double strike and count.
A strike. Yep,
both strikes. Oh, that was a great shot and a really bad break. So now we're going to look at Gary having to throw the strike, and then
we do have the possibility of a tie here.
We do. Yeah. Wow.
All right, so he has to make this spare. He wants to get every pin possible here because the numbers really matter.
Yeah, this is where you settle yourself down because you know you're upset because you threw such a good shot, but you really need that spare. Okay.
All right, so he's posted up at 226.
He must strike
on this first ball. There's Fran, keeping an eye on things there at the Castellone Chrysler Dodge Jeep brand scoreboard. I'm sure he knows what Gary needs here.
All right.
Looks like he's enjoying himself just a little bit too much. He's got that ball in his hand a very long time.
Yeah. Oh, he threw that really good.
He did. He looked
Great shot. That was a fantastic shot. All right.
So after 5 years of doing, 4 full years of doing this show, I've watched Gary bowl a lot of times, and this is actually his 10th show, and his key is to definitely get that ball off his hand without that thumb, without keeping his hand there too long. That is his key, and I thought he might have kept it in there hair long, but he did throw that great.
Now, in the event of a tie, what do you guys do?
A 2-frame roll off.
Okay.
Strike here for a win. Anything else he needs to spare.
Yeah. Still needs all 10. Another good shot.
That is awesome. Well,
very impressive.
All right, all he has to do is keep it on the lane.
Yeah, and I think he's pretty good after this.
I think he's pretty good about it too, but I have seen too much in this game not to make sure he keeps this on the lane.
And it's on the lane. All right.
Great.
All right.
Great job by Gary Kinyon. We'll be right back to wrap up this match, talk to everybody, and preview what's going on for next week. .233 to 226. Experience versus youth. Although, Josh, you put on a great show for us today, and through all the transition of these lanes looking tough, you did a beautiful job of figuring them out. Did you have a good time out here today?
Yes, I did. Finally got my first win on the show.
Yes, you did. Well, out of 2, that was pretty good odds, actually. But he's a tough one, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. He was throwing the ball real good today.
Yep. Sue, talk about experienced Gary Kinyon over there.
Experienced Gary Kinyon. How were you feeling going into the 10th frame, knowing that a double seals it up or a strike and 9 spares a tie?
Well, in the 9th frame, I took out a couple pieces of tape, like 4 pieces, because my thumb swelled up. But once I threw the shot in the 9th, left a solid 4 again, but I got it clean. I felt comfortable that I could throw a couple good shots in the 10th to win the match.
It was great bowling. Nice watching you do that. I did make note that you changed your tape.
Yeah,
So I knew something was going on.
Yeah, my thumb was swelling up, and so therefore I had to take tape out, or else I was all those 4 pins just started hanging in the thumb. I wasn't getting out clean to get it down the lane. And then when I finally got enough tape out, then I got it down the lane, and it was okay.
It was awesome. Great under pressure for this old guy.
You know that, Josh? The master was giving us something to go on for the future. But anyways, we were treated to a fantastic match with these 2 guys, and Sue and I and Fran will be back right after this to wrap up the day. Well, we've wrapped up our first day here at Rapids Bowling Center. We said it was going to be a diverse field, and we really didn't know how that was going to go, but experience took over, didn't it?
Experience did take over, and awesome to watch Gary just so pumped up and excited and fun, and nice to see Josh like come back and figure it out and just really make it an exciting match.
You know what was very impressive is really we saw some high scores there at the end, but when we saw some people struggle, and wasn't it nice to see how graceful these bowlers handle the adversity on the lane, isn't it?
Yeah, especially because Chris didn't have a real good look at all. And then, of course, in the last game, the lane seemed to open up a little bit, and they just got on top of it and struck a bunch. So,
yeah, well, we've had a lot of lessons learned here today with our bowlers, and we thank you for watching, and we hope you tune in next week for 3 more bowlers here at Rapids Bowling Center.